Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Tommy.
Hey, who's that girl?
Is it Jess?
It is, and I kind of gave away what we're talking about today, didn't I?
That's okay. It's one of my favorite shows of all time.
Is it New Girl?
It is New Girl, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
On Can We Talk About?
What is this?
The Jewish Star, I just said that.
Hey, Schmidt, just...
This is so terrible.
You gave me a cookie, I gave you a cookie. You gave me a cookie, gave you a cookie. Gave me cookie, got you cookie. You gave me cookie, I got you cookie, man. Gave me cookie, got you cookie. We're even. We're even, Schmidt.
Can we talk about New Girl?
Oh, who's that girl?
It's Jess.
Sorry, it was like very
It's so
announcery.
good. No,
Who's that girl?
girl?
Yeah. I love New Girl. I love New Girl since the beginning. I don't mean to just jump headfirst into it, but this is one of the shows that in my entertainment background past, I received as a screener in like over the summer or going into the fall back when it premiered. And I think it was 2011.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the same year. Now I'm second guessing myself, but was this the same year that Glee premiered? No, it was not. Okay, this is a couple years after that. But I used to get a bunch of Fox screeners, and there were two that stand out to me as like, oh wow, like that. Like I watched it, and I ran to my wife to say, "You have to watch this. This is really good." And that was Glee, and then it was just to be clear, just the pilot episode of Glee. I fell off of that real quick. But then it was New Girl, which I thought was great from the pilot.
It is probably one of my top comfort shows.
Really?
Yeah. I've rewatched the show a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I didn't realize how I fell off of it, just to be clear, right? I think this is going to be the one where you know a lot more than I do about the thing we're talking about, because I watched it initially, probably like the first season, and then sort of fell off and have watched episodes here and there. But like, if you ask me some like details about the show,
you're not going to have them.
I know most of the details. I know details about the show, like the bullet points, I guess. But as far as like being able to recite and know like what season something happened or like what episode this happened or anything like that, no. But that's not to say that like this is, which I also think is great, because we haven't really gone over something before where like you were the super fan and I was the, you know, not as far into it as you.
Okay. Well, I did not watch it from the beginning. I wish I had.
Yeah.
But this was one of those things where I watched it here and there, would see clips here and there. I was like, that show seems so funny. And I'm not sure where I initially started watching it, but I know once it hit Netflix.
Yeah.
Like the minute it hit Netflix, I was like, oh, great. I've wanted to watch this show beginning to end. So I definitely did. And I do continue to do it over and over.
I was going to say, a lot of people did. I was going back and doing some research as we were going into this, and I didn't realize how popular it got because it went on Netflix. To the point where people don't even, there are some people who don't even realize this wasn't a Netflix show. Some people think this was a Netflix show.
Yeah. And which is so crazy because it's not, you can feel the time difference. Like you can feel that it's not a show made in 2019, 2020.
Right.
You can feel the 2011 difference. Like everybody doesn't have a cell phone. Everybody's not, you barely talk about social media. I don't even think really social media is talked about that much in the show at all.
Yeah. I mean, the closest you get to some like technological or like internet-y thing is like she meets her roommates off of Craigslist.
Yeah, a Craigslist listing, which is also so 2011. It's like,
is Craigslist still used for that? I feel like
I don't know,
Craigslist
but I went through a real Craigslist phase where I was like, ooh, I can find free stuff. Ooh, I can find apartments. I wasn't even moving anywhere. I don't know. I just loved the idea of Craigslist. Actually, very funny sidebar. My father, who is technologically just inept, is saying it nicely. We were at a hospital for something. Somebody was in the hospital, one of our family members, and he was looking for a car part. And he's like, there was a computer in the hospital waiting room because it was like very severe. So they had a computer set up there for you. And he's looking for something. He's like, I can't find it. Can you help me? I was like, sure. I was like, where are you? He's like, I'm on Craigslist.
Yeah.
I was like,
Greg?
You're where? He's like, it's not coming up. There's something wrong with this computer. The internet's not working. That man wrote GREGGSLIST.com. He's like, I always find stuff on Craigslist. Why isn't this working? I was like, oh my fuckity fuck. It's Craigslist, Dad. He's like, no, it's Craigslist. And I was like, all right, you keep going with Mr. Greg over there.
I mean, now you're giving me ideas. I mean, I feel like if there is no Craigslist, we should just go register it right now.
Register to Craigslist?
Yeah. It's Craig's brother.
You'd have one customer, my father, who probably still types it in. And who's
well, I mean, I would imagine it's not just your dad. I'm imagining there's a few other men.
Dads? a few other dads out there.
I gotta go to Craigslist.
Craigslist. So that's a sidebar. Apologize. But so this show was written by Liz Merriweather, who, oddly enough, this is the first show she ever created.
Yeah, I was
going
one. Over. I didn't realize that either. And I also would give her a lot of credit, too, because the show has a really specific aesthetic. And if you think about what it's supposed to be, like a lot of these shows about, 20-somethings or late 20-somethings or whatever, like, well, they're all friends and they're living in the city, like Friends and, Will and Grace. And like all these shows like are, multi-camera sitcoms, or they're like heavily polished. And, this had its own aesthetic where it was filmed almost like a drama, right? Like a single camera drama.
She said she liked the darker aesthetic, right?
Yeah. And so, but also that comes from not necessarily her. What I was giving her credit was she brought in a lot of creative talent as like showrunners. Like she didn't sit there and be like, well, this is my show, I'm going to run the show. Like she brought in people from 30 Rock. She brought in people from some other shows that she really liked and put them in charge of that stuff. So the cinematography and all that is actually to the credit of the cinematographer, obviously, and the directors, but she actually knew what she wanted. So she brought them in specifically to kind of bring that tone to the show. So, and it's great. I love it.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I love that it wasn't supposed to be called New Girl. It was supposed to be called Chicks and Dicks.
I saw that. Yeah.
Which I feel like New Girl is so much more reminiscent of Jess's character, who Jess is. And she was Zooey Deschanel, who plays Jessica Day in the show.
Yeah.
It wasn't written for her, but she was the person that they were like, oh no, Jessica Day is going to be Zooey Deschanel. So she was there from ground up. She was part of casting. She helped pick all of her co-stars. And I didn't know this, oddly enough, until I was doing research for this episode. The whole style of the show she did after Freaks and Geeks.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. I love that because that's to me, that's my first teenage angst comfort show. I loved Freaks and Geeks, and I'm so sad that it didn't give us more.
Yeah. I mean, well, I love Freaks and Geeks as well. We should do an entire episode on Freaks and Geeks.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's bottled up in such a way that I feel like it's worth touching on. But yeah, I mean, you compare those two shows too, and I think what's interesting about this is, and talking about the aesthetic, right, where it's not Friends, it's not, I love Seinfeld, it's not Seinfeld, it's not, it's nothing where it's like super polished to the point, right? I think, and I think we're going off some of the same material, but when the show was supposed to be called Chicks and Dicks, that was supposed to be more of like, a bunch of late 20s, early 30s, friends and their sexual endeavors and this around, just life. And the creator like pulled it back to be like, no, like Merriweather brought it back to be more about just social relationships, like friendships, like it wasn't about sexual endeavors. It was more about just their social relationships and their friends. And, clearly there's relationships in there, but they made it more grounded and more relatable into like, people in that, early 30s when like, your 20s are behind you. I think that was one of the things I read too, is that it's supposed to connect to where you're kind of growing up and you're at a point in life where it's time to mature, but like you still want to play drinking games. You still want to like
True American,
do fun
baby.
things. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of the other things that helps the show stand out. And on top of that too, like the writing. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shows where like, all right, I could think of other people in those roles or someone who plays a role so well, right? Where it's like, oh wow, I can't imagine anybody else. This is like one show too, where I'm like, especially Jess, especially like Max Greenfield's Schmidt, right? Like I can't see anyone else in these characters. And I feel like
at all, not even a little bit. Yeah.
Right. And even with the writing, I'm like, no, I think it's more the delivery and the way they, hold their, like create their
chemistry
role,
too. Like the chemistry between the cast is incredible.
Yeah. I love that. But I want to touch on one thing because I mean, I think this is probably the more well-known thing, but I don't know if passive viewers who picked up on it from Netflix know the story about it. Do you know the story about Coach and why Coach disappears and comes back and disappears?
Yes, it was like, all right, where did he go? Now I have to watch the show he left us for. And I did eventually watch it. And it was great. It was a great comedy.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I know it didn't do very well, but I really liked it. So he left for another show. Show got canceled. They brought him back, right?
Well, that was the thing.
He was left already the show. On. Right?
So no,
Pilot episode.
No, it's sort of crazier, right?
Okay.
So but you're almost there. Okay. So he did happy endings.
I remember listening to it on the podcast. I listened to the New Girl Rewatch podcast with the cast.
Gotcha. Okay. So he did happy endings, which was I believe it was a mid-season replacement on ABC. That premiered early in the year 2011 in the spring, but it wasn't expected to get picked up for a second season. So he went into pilot season, filmed the pilot for New Girl, and then somewhere in the middle of that, ABC says, oh yeah, we don't really have anything else to replace it, so we'll pick up happy endings for a second season. So now he filmed the pilot for New Girl.
Poor guy.
But couldn't get out of happy endings because it was picked up for a second season. So he had to go back to the show he was already on that continued, which, by the way, that show ended up only lasting 3 seasons anyway. But so then after happy endings ended, that's when they brought him back as a recurring character in, season 3 and 4. So.
And then he leaves again.
Yeah, then he leaves.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And then he comes back again. The final episodes.
So, and speaking of which, one of my favorite jokes was, speaking of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, do you remember when they had the crossover episode?
Yeah. With Zooey Deschanel and
Yeah.
When they go to
one
the
of my
city,
favorite jokes. One of my favorite jokes, and I had to watch both. I did watch both sides of that episode, but my favorite joke is Jake from Brooklyn Nine-Nine stops Zooey Deschanel in her car, and he's like, I have to commandeer your car. And she goes, it's a crossover. There's a reference to the fact that it's a crossover. But the fact that she's shouting, it's a crossover in a crossover is hilarious. She was in a crossover, shouting it's a crossover in a crossover. There we go. It
was a crossover Inception. She wasn't meant to be, Amanda Bynes was considered for that role originally, right? Yeah. So Amanda Bynes was considered for. Can you imagine that poor girl? Jeez Louise.
I feel. Well, what's funny too
maybe it would have helped her. That's
what I was going to say. I feel like, I love Zooey Deschanel to an extent that I won't just sit here and confess my love for Zooey Deschanel, but I love Zooey Deschanel. But I feel like I could see Amanda Bynes doing this. If it set her up from the beginning to be her thing, and B, I feel like the character would be a little bit different. But B, yeah, you're right. I think that maybe would have saved Amanda Bynes a little life.
Yeah, but for me, I feel like Zooey Deschanel has this, which is so funny because I knew her from Elf, like a lot of people, right? So we were introduced to blonde Zooey Deschanel in Elf, who's a little bit more dry, a little bit less lovable and quirky. But this version of Zooey Deschanel is doe-eyed, adorable, a teacher. And I know that there's one episode where Nick has a girlfriend who's a lawyer, who's not about Jess's quirky little girly behavior. And Jess goes off and she's like, I rock a lot of polka dots and I have touched glitter in the last 24 hours. I just love that character. And I love that they made the main character not your typical sex appeal, gorgeous woman. The main character of the show is like you said, a relatable female, which I think makes it so fun.
Yeah. And she had that, in the early 2000s, there was a few movies kind of like this. She was sort of that, even though she never had a pixie cut, right? But she always kind of came off she had that manic pixie dream girl kind of personality, because she was in Elf, which again, she's adorable in that, right? But then she was in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I loved her in that. She's in a bunch of stuff in the middle there too, but she was also in The Happening. She was in Yes Man. And then she was in 500 Days of Summer, which I think was her big breakout.
Yeah, I think that's when everyone fell in love with her.
Yeah. So, yeah, and she's been in a bunch of stuff, but especially the early 2000s, she was in a bunch of things. It's just that she really wasn't with small exception there, but you're right. There was a certain personality to Zooey Deschanel that I think we attribute to Jess from New Girl. But at the same time, too, like you watch her TikToks and stuff where you like.
She says she is Jess.
Yeah.
Like, she wore fairy wings in high school. Legitimate fairy wings. So
yeah. So I think that's what it was, is like, you know, everything else we've seen her in is Zooey Deschanel acting. This was the closest you probably got to her probably real quirky personality. And the theme song to the show, that's her, because I know she's a singer too. I mean, I know it is her singing.
She has a band. Yeah.
But was that a song from her band, or was that something just for the show?
She created for the show. Yeah.
She created it for the show. Okay.
For the show. Yeah. That was part of her contract, was she would be able to, play music on the show. But I feel like we'd be remiss without talking the rest of the cast. So Jake Johnson ends up playing Nick Miller, who everybody wants to be a Cece, everybody wants to be a Jess. When it came down to it, I was a straight Nick Miller. I know that about myself. Max Greenfield played Winston.
Yeah.
Hannah Simone played Cece.
Wait. Max Greenfield played
Winston Schmidt. I'm like reading it. Yeah, he's played Schmidt. Sorry. Winston, this is so funny. Fun fact. Yeah. So Winston Bishop and Winston Schmidt, played by Max Greenfield and Lamorne Morris. There is an episode where we find out that Schmidt's first name is Winston.
Really?
And he says to Winston, played by Lamorne Morris, he's like, I'm taking my name back. And Winston is like, no, you're not. He's like, I'm taking my name back. And you find out that Schmidt's first name is Winston. And I'm reading the IMDb cast list. So thank you for catching that. Hannah Simone plays Cece, and Damon Wayans Jr. plays Coach. Yeah. And then the freaking cast of characters that make guests. Cameos on the show is insanity. But I feel like Max Greenfield and Schmidt might be one of the funniest written characters on a sitcom. Yeah. He is perfection.
Yeah. I don't know. And I thought about it too, is because obviously like with any show, right, there's the writers write the character and then the actor portrays it. This is basically how film and television works. But there has to be a point when Max Greenfield makes Schmidt his own, right? Like where he develops the cadence and how he speaks, and like just Schmidt's way of speaking is on a land of its own. And I gotta go back and try to figure out like when does he develop that? Is it from the first episode, from the pilot?
It's from the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Schmidt was like, like you said, Max Greenfield made Schmidt his own. Winston was kind of hard, and Lamorne Morris kind of talks about that. He talks about how the way that they originally wrote Winston, he was like this ex-basketball star who played in Lafayette, which is like, he didn't play in the NBA. He didn't play like overseas. He played in like a tiny little country where he like, was a nobody. Yeah. But they kept changing Winston's character, and until they found Winston's groove, and he was kind of like, he never knew who he was supposed to be. Yeah. Eventually Winston becomes a colorblind, very goofy man who's obsessed with his cat and wears a lot of bird shirts and doesn't know that he wears insanely bright colored clothing because he thinks everything is like brown and gray.
Yeah.
And has no idea. So I feel like they gave the characters over to the actors playing them and said, like, kind of do your thing with this. Yeah. And I know that Liz Merriweather let the actors be part of the storylines. Like they were able to pitch ideas, and she went with them. Like Tran. I know you didn't watch that far, but Tran was created by Jake Johnson texting Liz Merriweather in the middle of the night. It was like, I want to have a homeless, nice Asian man whose family hates me and he never speaks except for maybe 1 or 2 episodes. Yeah. And she was like, okay, let's do it. Yeah. And Tran's one of the funniest characters in the show, and he does not speak.
Oh, no, I know Tran. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm not, like I said, I sprinkled throughout random episodes across multiple seasons. So, I know about, Winston's story arc, becoming a police officer in later seasons, and Coach coming back, and all those things. I am aware. That's what I'm saying. I'm vaguely aware.
All right.
Down to details, I don't know if I'll get that. But yeah, I mean, the guest stars in general, like there are so many.
Are you kidding me? Prince.
Yeah.
Need me say more? And Prince essentially made the pitch himself. He was a huge New Girl fan, and he reached out to Fox and was like, I want to be on New Girl. And I'll only do it if I'm part of the reason why Jess and Nick end up together and in love. Like, I want to be part of their story arc. And which even makes it more hilarious. Like, he basically was like, this is what I want the episode to be like. This is what I want to happen. I want it to be based in my house.
Yeah.
And they wanted, so Prince wanted them to have a party at his house that essentially brought Nick and Jess together.
Yeah.
And they wanted the Kardashians to be guests at that party. And he found out about that.
Yeah.
And said, you can't air this episode if you put the Kardashians in it. I don't want them in it. And they didn't air the clips. Like, it's shot. It exists somewhere. The Kardashians are guests in Prince's house, and he wouldn't let them air it. Imagine having that power over Fox.
Wow. Yeah, that's to get the Kardashians, cut from an episode from a series. That's impressive. A high bar.
That is impressive.
I also, one other thing I didn't realize, in just kind of going over the summary of it all, I didn't realize how early on Schmidt and Cece became a couple. I felt like that dragged on for some reason in my head, that they didn't actually get together for a long time.
They weren't official for a few seasons. They were just banging. They were like, they were casual.
Yeah.
They were real casual.
Right. But at what point, does that turn? How many seasons in do they finally? I don't remember
what season it is, but it's about halfway through. Like, it is not. Really? Yeah, it takes a while. It does drag on. Like, that's one thing we can say about this show. Yeah, they like a slow burn. They like a real slow burn.
Well, I mean, the way the show is set up, that Jess and Nick are destined to be together, right? They are their
chemistry was so intense. Like, Zooey Deschanel and Jake Johnson's chemistry was so intense. They specifically made it so that they could never physically touch in the first season and a half, because they were like, it is like, we're going to have to make them a couple if we give them too many scenes together where they're physically touching, because their chemistry was so off the charts.
Yeah. Which is a crazy thing to have.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, like, the show, it's going to go there. Right. And
for sure.
And that's for any show. Right. If you look at like The Office, The Office is a good example. I don't want to look at Friends.
Pam. Yeah.
Right. Jim and Pam, like, they had to get together, but you have to like throw roadblocks in the way and like, help it build. And I think they don't even get together until like season 3 or 4 officially.
Yeah.
I think that's okay, right? Like, that's okay. You have to navigate that. But at some point too, it's like, you can't keep this going on much longer. But I mean, Jess and Nick don't get together until what? Like, I mean, they get together and then they break up. But did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They break up.
But then they get back together by the end.
Yes, they do. And they get married. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. How long before they get together? Was it like the 3rd season?
I don't remember which season it's in, but I know that it's probably one of my favorite scenes in television.
Yeah.
When they finally kiss in their hallway. And it's like, oh, it's one of those, finally.
But wait.
Some 11-year-old girl is watching that like, oh, this is what I want to happen to me.
Yeah.
It's not how it works, ladies.
Well, what I was going to ask too is, both Nick and Jess especially had other partners throughout the season.
Yes.
Did you have any, like, if they're not together, who was your secondary kind of favorites for each of them?
I loved the character of Russell. He comes in the show. He's like a dad at Jess's school that she teaches at, and he's insanely rich. So much so that like he's crazy loaded. And there's this scene, and I don't know if it's in the show or it's like cut credit, but Nick is sitting in Russell's office. Like, they have a party and she, all of Jess's friends come, and Nick is sitting in the office, and it's like this beautiful office, and he's sitting at this massive mahogany desk, and he like puts Russell's cardigan on and he pretends that he's a businessman, and he like picks up the phone and he's like, hello, Mr. President, buy China.
Yeah.
He's like pretending to be what it would be to be a rich man. It's like one of the funniest scenes of the show.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember the name of do you remember the name of the actor that plays Russell?
Oh, Dermot Mulroney.
Okay, yes. He is one of my favorite Jess significant others, because he's just like a no bullshit kind of guy, and their relationship was great. And I know it's hot take.
Yeah.
people were really pissed at Megan Fox when she came on the show for a season because Zooey Deschanel was having a baby and like her character was written off as being part of jury duty and she couldn't like communicate with anyone. And people really liked Megan Fox.
Yeah.
And Fox was actually considering replacing Zooey Deschanel with Megan Fox, which is insane to me. Yeah,
that is
insane to me. But then they eventually got the backlash of people were really pissed because it really hindered the Nick and Jess love storyline.
Well, where was Nick and Jess's storyline at that point? When they
had both been dating other people. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was I'm looking at like their faces. I need to take the actors' names off because I'm going to keep saying the actor instead of the character. But it was Schmidt and Cece's wedding.
Okay.
And he wants to take Megan Fox to the wedding. And everyone's like, no, that should be when, Nick and Jess get back together. And I liked Megan Fox on the show.
Yeah.
She was like very deadpan, hilarious pharmaceutical salesperson who always had these like insane drugs in her travel on suitcase. And she just lived in Jess's room for a while. It was a very funny storyline, but it also felt to me like you could feel like they were just replacing Zooey Deschanel because she was having a baby. Like you could feel that.
I saw some TikToks recently too, talking about, different TV shows and how they try to hide a character when they're pregnant and like, hide the belly and do all kinds of crazy things. And they talked about how in New Girl, like she goes off to jury duty. And at one point, I don't know if she's pregnant again or she comes back and they just said, fuck it. And like you watch New Girl and there's like scenes where it's like, Zooey Deschanel is clearly pregnant. Like they're not even covering it up. She just has a giant belly and they're not addressing it. And it's kind of funny.
It is. Yeah.
So is that officially your kind of take is if Jess didn't exist, Nick should have been with Reagan. And if
I don't know. I don't know if I like Nick with Reagan, but I liked the comedy between them. I liked how different they were. Like she was a super successful, hot smoke show. And he was just like this hot mess bartender, bar owner who was trying to write hilarious mystery novels. And like he could have been the next Knives Out. Could have had Nick Miller's novels. But I don't know. It was... I don't know. I think maybe those would be my choices. But I really did like Russell for Jess. I thought they were very funny.
Yeah. For Winston, did you approve of Allie, his partner?
Yeah, she was hilarious. Yeah. In the beginning, she's very serious. And then by the end of the show, they let her be just as quirky as Winston is. And I love that. Yeah.
Because when you initially meet her, it's kind of like she's all business. She's all like
really
it's a brick
tight,
wall.
buttoned up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't she have like an addiction to Chinese game shows or like Korean game shows or something? And like she was apparently a huge winner on some, I don't remember what it is, but it's like an Asian game show. And she like won all these insane prizes. And it's like her big secret. And Winston goes to her apartment and she's got like these insane things that she won from this game show. And it is hilarious. But that is, I think that was perfectly written.
Yeah. On Winston still, do you think like clearly Winston was written in because Coach wasn't in the show and they had to kind of figure out how to navigate that. And I'll give them credit, right? Because they could have very easily been like, oh, okay, we're just going to swap Morris in for Wayne's and then that'll be it. And Morris is now Coach or put someone else in there. Right. But they didn't do that. They wrote him as a whole new character. And then, Coach, went to go move with his girlfriend off screen. But do you think if Damon Wayans Jr. didn't leave the show that he would have been better than Winston? I mean, maybe it's an unfair question.
They felt too similar in the beginning. Like, I feel like they had to really differentiate Winston from Coach. Like, Winston came in as an athlete. And I know Liz Merriweather talks about how she didn't want to reshoot the entire pilot to replace Damon Wayans with Lamorne Morris. So they were very similar in the beginning. And I feel like once I differentiated Winston and made him like the, a horrible, puzzled doing, weird, colorblind dude that he was. Yeah. There was room for both of them. Yeah. To me, the comedy was a lot better at that point. Yeah. But Winston was definitely, they had to work the kinks out with that. Even I started rewatching the beginning and I was like, wow, Winston's a tough sell. The first 3 episodes, you're like, oh boy.
Well, what's funny too is if you're curious about the chemistry between Jake Johnson and Coach, have you ever seen the movie Let's Be Cops?
Yeah.
Which is, so like that almost gives you like a little taste of like, oh, here's what would have happened if Damon Wayans Jr. stuck around and was in the show, and like what their chemistry would have been as friends. Like you kind of get like a little glimpse of that, which was cool. Which, funny enough, I actually went to Fox's offices to watch the screening for Let's Be Cops, and the reason I can time box when it was is because we all had our, we're in the screening room. You're not allowed to have your cell phones or anything. It's like me and other people from the press. And as soon as the movie's over, I pick up my phone. All of a sudden, everyone starts like picking up their phones and checking what they missed. And all of a sudden, like everyone's seems concerned. And I open up my phone. And that's when Robin Williams passed. Oh, so like while I was watching the screening, but like while I was watching the screening for Let's Be Cops,
a very hilarious comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too, is like Jake Johnson, who I've met, by the way, and had conversations with, and is a super amazingly nice human being. Actually, I think I met him doing an interview with him for Let's Be Cops after I saw the screening. But super nice guy. He's like one of those, he did a bunch of different movies while New Girl was happening and then post New Girl.
Drinking Buddies is one of my favorite movies.
Is it really? It's like, it's
and
one of those movies where
dry. There's really nothing happening. But I think I just watched it at a time where I needed to watch something like that. And so there's like an emotional connection for me watching it. But I'd never seen him in anything like that before.
Yeah.
Where he isn't the funny guy. Yeah. So I think that's why I liked it so much.
Is he not the funny guy in Drinking Buddies?
Not really.
Okay.
It's like a little bit funny, and I also used to be a very big Olivia Wilde fan. So
yeah.
Not anymore, Olivia.
Yeah. Are we going to Prattville? Is Olivia Munn okay? Are we allowed to like her? Because she
look at her.
Well, I was going to say, bringing it back, she shows up in New Girl somewhere, right?
Yes. She's like a stripper that Jake Johnson dates.
Okay.
And she rides a motorcycle, and she's hilarious.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like Olivia Munn better than Olivia Wilde.
Again, talking about all the cameos, Gordon Ramsay makes a cameo.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a very Fox television thing for them to do.
Yeah.
It's just like shoehorn. How many cameos and stuff can we get? But I'll give the show credit, right? Like the show got me to not hate Megan Fox, right? Like it made Megan Fox likable. So I'll give them credit. After
Transformers, I feel like we were all like, she was off on set. Michael Bay had to fire her because she was on her cell phone all the time. Oddly enough, I used to be a manager for a restaurant that was a chain steakhouse. And one of the training things our boss would always talk about when it came to cell phones is how Megan Fox got fired by Michael Bay for her cell phone use on set. If you could be fired from $1 billion franchise, we could fire you from Outback Steakhouse.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite things. Something I read this morning that I love. Did you know that Jess's character was loosely based off of Diane Keaton?
No.
What's
that connection? How does that work?
Just that she just loved Diane Keaton's kind of her sense of style, the way that she's a little bit off kilter. She's not like your typical, Diane Keaton is beautiful. We all know that. But Diane Keaton is one of the most fashionable women in Hollywood. And it's all Diane Keaton's own style. Diane Keaton, if you took her head off just by the clothes she's wearing, it's Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
So, I guess Liz Merriweather was a big fan of Diane Keaton and kind of based her giddiness, but also, she's pretty smart. And when I was listening to the New Girl podcast, I did not know Hannah Simone, who plays Cece, is insanely intelligent. She worked for the UN. Yeah.
What?
She's so smart. Yeah. She's
I didn't know that either.
Ivy League educated. She worked for the UN and they make her play that's another thing is she's not just a dumb model on the show.
Yeah.
She has so much depth. And
I was going to say, I do like how the show doesn't lean in, especially for the female characters. It doesn't try to lean into stereotypes. to your point, the show's initial premise, or what Fox originally wanted to be focused on, like the sex lives of these characters, like that just seems like caricatures of what, other sitcoms, like rinse and repeat. Whereas this felt a lot more earnest. And I think that has to do with the fact of like the age at which the characters are at in their lives, where they're not young and stupid. Like, yeah, they're in their early 30s. They're allowed to be like, they're allowed to, be more mature, but also have fun at the same time. But also like that anxiety of like, oh shit, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I have to make life decisions.
Jake Johnson, when he got the role, the first episode, he said, I feel like Nick would be sitting on the couch for this.
Yeah.
I feel like Nick would be sitting down for this, and like got to sit on the couch for most of the first episode.
Yeah.
While everybody else had to stand and hit their marks and all this other stuff. And then by the second episode, he was like, you know what? I feel like Nick would probably just be sitting on the couch drinking a beer. I feel like we should keep that going. And Jake Johnson intentionally made it so that he could be sitting most of the show. So that he could be sitting down drinking beer on purpose while everyone else had to work. And they were so pissed because they were like, in the beginning, they're like, why does he keep doing that? And he's like, you wait, this is going to pay off. And eventually he just got to be sitting on the couch all the time, drinking beer while everybody else had to stand for hours in their marks and do stuff. And he's like, I'm just sitting over here drinking fake beer, which is a very Nick thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's good that the actors had that leeway to define how their characters would act and where they'd be, because that's the thing. I think that's a defining, Nick is a sort of like, I don't want to say slacker. That's the wrong word, but he went to
law school and dropped out. So he's clearly intelligent.
Right. But it's kind of like in It's Always Sunny, where, Frank was successful. He's got, money in the bank, and he just, wants to like, throw away the expectations of society and just be like, I'm going to act the way I want to act, and I'm going to do what I want to do. It's the same thing kind of with Nick, where, he went to law school, did all these things, and he's just like, I just want to be a bartender. This is what I want to do. I want to write a book. I want to, like he just goes with the flow of what he enjoys in life, and not necessarily, aspiring for anything that would, quote unquote, be more successful, because it wouldn't make him happy, So, and I think that's a fair conflict to have at that age in life too.
Yeah,
so like,
agreed.
Talking about like comfort shows, like, it's okay to like not know what you want, or know what you want, and for it to not be anything extravagant or large, or just, be very simple.
I mean, it gave me permission to be a bartender till I was 30 years old.
Yeah.
One of the, like, I love my little fun facts. And one of my favorite ones is Coach's first name is Ernie.
Yeah.
Just like the character from Cheers, who goes by Coach, and his character's first name is Ernie. And that was Liz Merriweather's nod to one of her favorite shows.
I didn't know that either. That's crazy.
That was like one of my favorite ones. I was like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Are there any other nods to anything else? Or there's obviously the connection to, we said Freaks and Geeks, right? There's the connection to like 30 Rock. There's the connection to Cheers, you're saying. Like, is there any other connections that I might have
there's
missed?
quite a few. So
yeah,
more like people call them continuity goofs. And I don't know if you've read this article too. It's a January media article, but in season 1 of New Girl, Jess talks about the show Bridge to Terabithia, which she stars in 2007. Yeah. So before the show.
Yeah.
And in season 2, Schmidt mentions Cal Penn. And then later in season 5, they bring Cal Penn in to play a recurring character. And Nick has a poster of him for the J.C. Brooks and Uptown Sound in his bedroom.
Yeah.
Which we were just talking about Aubrey Plaza before we started recording. But Jake Johnson, who plays Nick Miller, stars as the lead character alongside Aubrey Plaza in the band's music video for Rouse Yourself in 2013. But one of my favorite is Nick Miller in the show talks about how dinosaurs aren't real. Like, that's one of the things about Nick Miller. He's just ridiculous. He's like, there's no way dinosaurs are real. Dinosaurs weren't real. He then goes on to a star as a supporting role in Jurassic World.
Yeah.
And the other thing is when Jess and she dates this guy called Dr. Sam, when they break up, she's like laying on the couch crying hysterically listening to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift loved that. So then she comes as a cameo later on as the reason that Cece's husband doesn't want to marry her and ends the wedding because he wants to be with Elaine, who's played by Taylor Swift, which is so funny because they did it on purpose. They put Taylor Swift in heels. Yeah. Because the guy that Cece's marrying is so short. So he like runs to her and she's like a full 1.5 taller than him. It's pretty hilarious. But those are some of the nods to the, I would say more later on into the show.
Yeah. But I like that. I like the show. I mean, the show
too.
Doesn't take itself so seriously in that aspect. So I do have an appreciation for that. But yeah, no, it's a great show. Also, you mentioned, and this is where I thought you were going with it, is Jake Johnson and the music video you said for with Zoe Deschanel. I mean, with Aubrey Plaza.
A girl.
They're also in the movie together, Safety Not Guaranteed.
I haven't watched that yet.
You haven't watched that?
No, I have to because I know I would love it.
It's okay. I mean, it's mainly, Jake is not a major character in the movie. I mean, well, he's in the movie. He's a major character, but like it's predominantly Mark Duplass and Aubrey Plaza, whose name I got stopped. My brain, as I'm saying her name it's always like replacing the B with the D and pronouncing it Audrey instead of Aubrey.
I love her. We love her.
Yeah.
Just so you know, this podcast, we are big Aubrey Plaza fans.
Huge Aubrey Plaza fans. But the show is great. Now, just to cut to the end, how did you feel about the way the show? Because we talked about this on another episode about how TV shows end and like their series finales and how it can be good or bad. Well, that was mainly dramas. This is obviously a comedy. So how did you feel about the way they wrapped up in the last season?
Before I say that, one like nod to another show before I forget, which I think you'll probably really like this. Peter Gallagher plays Schmidt's dad.
Yeah.
And then in the OC, Schmidt comes into the OC to play a younger Peter Gallagher.
Does he really?
Yeah. So I just thought that was really funny. But so the way that this show ended, it felt like it was getting canceled and they had to wrap shit up really quickly, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
And on the podcast it's hosted by Zoe Deschanel, Lamorne Morris, and Hannah Simone. So they've had everyone on the show from there.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying this, I just realized who I want Jess to be with, and I'll say it after. I just remembered my favorite cameo, and I'm sure you're going to agree with it as soon as I say it. Okay. But I felt like the last season was funny. Like I laughed really hard. There's some really quotable lines in that show. It's really like that. The whole show is very quotable, but it felt not final. It like they have like kind of a flashback at the end where you kind of see everybody's lives like much later and everything's kind of wrapped up. But it was only like 7 episodes or something ridiculous like that.
It was
right?
8. I was gonna mention that. So every season
like
was
20.
anywhere between 22 to 25 episodes. And the reason I mention this too is especially because a lot of people probably know the show from Netflix and not from the original airings on Fox. Because of the way like it just goes to the next episode. I don't even know if a lot of people even recognize that that it's the final season when it gets into the final 8 because you just go for the next episode. But correct me if I'm wrong, the last season, the entire season flashes forward, like it jumps in time, or is it just the last episode?
So no, it kind of jumps in time, the whole season, but the final episode has like a
further
2-minute ending of the whole episode is where they're like showing Nick and Jess's kids playing in Bears jerseys, playing with Cece and Schmidt's kids and Allie. Like they kind of go way further in the future, but it felt rushed. And every single character or every single person on the cast has said they would come back to do like all these shows are having their like resurgence one season or, whatever it may be. Like Gilmore Girls, we talked about that. They came back for a 4-episode kind of wrap up because everybody hated how that season ended. Yeah. And they've all said they would come back to do another season, a final season to give the show like the ending it deserved that Fox took from them.
Well, I was going to say, all right, so the final season, jumps ahead from the end of season 6 by 3 years.
Yes.
And then as we go through, then there's 8 episodes. The 8th episode is the series finale. And that's where we get into what you're talking about, which is like some additional flash forward. So we're from season 6, we jump forward 3 years. And then at the last episode, we end
even further.
Well, yeah, because the last episode is a month after their wedding. And then we also flash forward even further. So that's hard to do because, I mean, you at that point, you've already kind of flashed. Like you've jumped so much forward in time.
Maybe they could fill that gap.
You think
like
that's it?
I don't know. Or maybe it could be their kids, but like I feel like there's something there. And they talk about like maybe we could all live in the same housing development. Maybe we could all, like our kids go to the same school. Like there are hijinks to be had.
Yeah.
But
Old Girl. When we do a whole new show, it would be a spinoff.
New Girl.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I didn't say this, and I can't believe it because my favorite, there's 2 scenes in this show where I laugh until like I almost piss myself.
Okay. And
one of them has to do when Jess is dating a teacher from her school played by Justin Long.
I was going to say, I kept seeing.
That is to me who Jess should have ended up with because they were so perfect for each other. Yeah. But she's never had sex with anyone other than her first boyfriend that, cheats on her, which is why she leaves and moves into the loft. And she's not sure what to do. And she goes to this lingerie store and gets something called the Starfish. And it's like this insane, it's just like straps. Yeah. And she puts it, it's like the most Jess thing to do. She puts it on over like a cotton bra that's like purple striped and like not matching underwear. And someone, I think it might be Schmidt, tells her she's got to role play.
Yeah.
To like get it going. And so she turns into an old time newscaster and Justin Long pretends to be Walter Cronkite. And it's like the funniest fucking scene. And she's like, let me shit a little bit of that caboose. And he's like, oh, the caboose. You want to see the caboose? And it is so fucking funny. And then someone tells her that she should do some light choking, that he might be into it.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's just be normal after the role playing. And she's like, okay. And they're like, just kissing like normal. And then all of a sudden she just reaches up and starts strangling him. Yeah. And he's like, I gotta go. I'm sorry, I forgot to go. It's like one of the funniest scenes of the show. So if I'm changing my answer from Russell to that, because they are so fucking funny together.
Yeah.
Justin Long said when they filmed that, the whole crew had to walk off set because you could hear them laughing so hard and they wanted to get it done in one take. And they like kind of came up with that themselves.
Yeah.
And Zooey Deschanel was like, when we were about to film that, they couldn't get it together to film it because they were practicing their accents together. And Justin Long was just like, I could not stop laughing at all. And when she got serious with it, he was like, I realized I had to get serious because we're never going to get this take. And it's just like, oh my God. It makes me cry when I think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's fair because, I mean, he comes up a lot. And then there's a few other people that come up every once in a while when you talk about New Girl. But it's also funny because, like, you look at the list of actors that have popped up in the show. Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who is the waitress from Always Sunny. She comes up. A person who I never actually know his name, which is kind of funny because he's had bit parts over other TV shows and things. He was on Veep. He was on The Office as the IT guy who they didn't know his name.
Yeah.
Who played Robbie on New Girl. Nelson Franklin is the actor. From Freaks and Geeks, Linda Cardellini shows up as Abby Day.
Which is a nod to Freaks and Geeks. That's our Freaks and Geeks nod.
Exactly.
But she's, I love her so much.
Yeah.
I just watched Finish Dead to Me, and she's so good in that show.
Yeah. Angela Kinsey, who is also from The Office.
And she plays one of the teachers. And Jamie Lee Curtis plays Jess's mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is awesome.
They definitely have a really good, and that's the thing too, is it's what I will say, with probably the exception of Prince, there doesn't feel like a lot of mugging when they have guest stars. It doesn't seem like it's like, oh, look at the guest star, just they're here playing themselves, right? It's not like they have to give them some credit as much as you can flush it out as a guest role. Like anyone who's popped up in these like smaller roles, like the Jamie Lee Curtis, like when they do
Josh
show
Gad.
up.
Are you kidding me? Josh Gad plays Bear Claw, which is another fun fact for people that do watch the show a lot. There is a reference to a bear in every single episode of the show.
Is there really?
So whether it's a postcard on the fridge, which is a picture of a Bear Claw's character, someone says something about a bear, there's a reference to a bear in every single episode of the show. Isn't that nuts? Yeah.
Well, funny enough, do you know who one of the writers of the show is?
No.
A guy named Brett Bear.
Well, Bretty boy, he did himself right.
He was one of the he was one of the people that did work on 30 Rock also, who came over to New Girl.
Isn't Adam Brody does a cameo in New Girl too, I'm pretty sure, as one of Jess's ex-boyfriends. She's like best friends with.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, and Rob Reiner plays her dad. Jess's dad.
Oh, that's who I kept forgetting. Yeah. I love Rob Reiner and He's
hilarious in this role. He's such a fucking funny dude.
But that's what I mean, especially like the parents and like when they show up, they're not mugging. Like they feel like they're
great.
Yeah, they're like well-drawn characters, and I have an appreciation for that because you think about other shows and where like quote-unquote famous guest stars pop up, it's just there for like the studio audience to like clap and be like, oh, yeah, I love this person, and they're here. Like, whereas on New Girl, clearly also there's no studio audience. And then second to that, the way it's all done is they come in and they have characters. And
Dennis Farina plays Nick's dad, who's like a legend in himself, and plays like the shystiest shyster of all shysties as Nick's dad. And that's again another character where he comes on, you're like, holy shit, like that's Dennis Farina, and then he plays perfectly his character. They all do.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to prematurely murder him, but he passed away in 2013. Actually,
he did, and that's what they wrote him off the show as. That's when Nick's dad dies on the show.
Yeah.
And he only wanted Elvis at his wedding, and the Elvis impersonator doesn't show up. Jess puts the outfit on and pretends to be Elvis and sings "In the Ghetto" at Nick's dad's funeral.
Here's the thing: as someone who is attracted to Zooey Deschanel in this show and other things, it definitely breaks my brain to see her dressed up as Elvis.
It was so good.
Yeah. But do you have a favorite episode before we to tidy things up?
I don't know if I have a favorite episode. I have favorite moments. Like I told you my second funniest moment on the show, there's a scene where Cece ends up bartending at the bar for Nick. He now owns the bar. And she wants a popcorn machine.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want it because he thinks it'll smell and it's like a pain in the ass to clean. Yeah. But Jess wants Nick and Cece to get together because she thinks that they have a crush on each other. So she approaches Nick to talk to him about him getting together with Cece, but she doesn't say it in so many words. She's like trying to beat around the bush to see if he's interested. He thinks she's talking about the popcorn machine.
Yeah.
And essentially it leads to the most hilarious dialogue where Jess thinks that Nick is calling Cece's vagina smelly and oily and that Jess is offering to help clean it out for Nick. It's just, if you have not watched that scene, please pull the clip up because it is, sometimes if I'm in a bad mood, I just pull that clip up to like laugh until tears come out because it's incredible. The smell. She takes care of it. I don't think the smell will be a problem. Gotta get in there and wash it out.
Yeah, you gotta scrub it out. I'm sure there's like solvents and soaps and But I mean, what's funnier about it too? What makes that scene funny to me is Zooey Deschanel's delivery of her lines, where she's sort of defensive, but also wants to help, but is also getting offended as it keeps going.
As she's going and she's offering to help clean. I love my friends very much. I'm sorry, I'm not cleaning any of your snatches for you. I just love you all very much, but it's not happening.
Well, that's how much Jess cares.
I guess so.
The one last thing I will say too is in the show, and I was going over everything too, is, and I've been to this city many a times. And I'll be there next month. Jess's character comes from Portland, Oregon.
Yes, she's very Portland.
I feel like the show would have, like, with the exception of trying to explain how fashion model CC is in Portland, I was like, I could have almost seen this show being based in Portland.
That's fair. The episodes they do in Portland are incredible. So
but all around a great show, and I love Zooey Deschanel.
It is just one of my favorite comfort shows. I love a comedy where it's so well written that every 2 minutes there's a joke where you really have to listen to it. When you rewatch it,
Yeah.
you're getting so much more every single time I find another joke.
Yeah. It's
I've had a few people in my life I wish I could have given them a douchebag jar and collected money from their douchebaggery. So
I just want to. I'm jealous of their apartment. There's a lot of like TV,
that's
roommate
a good
apartments.
roommate apartment.
Yeah. See, it's not in New York, so it's a little bit more believable that it's like in this, it's an old loft apartment in some, offshoot area neighborhood in LA somewhere.
That they're not supposed to have 4 roommates in.
Right. Exactly.
Again, landlord episodes, hilarious.
Yeah. Well, this is cool. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm glad I was able to contribute something to this. Not
You
being
contributed
a
a
super
lot,
fan.
probably just as much as I did.
Well, I think I even underestimate my own.
I wish you would
knowledge
watch
of-
it all. I wish you would watch it all.
I will.
I think
I'll go
you'll
back.
really love it.
I mean, going into doing these episodes for like this podcast, there's some times where I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's good to, like gives me an excuse to go back and watch something.
And they're short, so you can just watch a little laughter, Tommy. Just
Well, I was
a
gonna
little
say, I feel like
laughter
this is a good, like, just put it on the background and let it roll and just like, listen to the jokes and stuff and kind of show. And I will give them credit, like, too, like they bring characters back and they, people don't just show up for an episode and then disappear and never get spoken about again. Like, people show up multiple times from like season 1, they show back up in season 4, and then so I have an appreciation for how well the show was made. And I was going to ask too, has Elizabeth Merriweather, has she done any other shows since?
This is probably something I should know.
Yeah,
but I don't. Let's see.
Yeah,
what has Little Miss Lizzie done? She just did The Dropout, which was one of the biggest shows of 2022.
It was about Elizabeth Holmes.
Yep. She did Bless This Mess, which was like very short-lived with Dak Shepard. And she apparently was on No Strings Attached, which she loosely based New Girl off of. She said it wouldn't have happened if she wasn't part of New Strings Attached.
Yeah.
But that was before. So since Bless This Mess, Single Parents, and The Dropout.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Not much.
Not
Not much.
No. But, all right, fair enough. Well, good chat.
It was awesome. Hope everyone has a great day, and thanks for listening to me fangirl about Zooey Deschanel with Tom.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I'm gonna go watch my filmography of Zooey Deschanel now. Just get my Zoe fix. So cool. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Gave me cookie, got you cookie.